Hello and welcome back to our show. For the next few weeks, we used to say few months, we will be bringing candidate here to you to talk about their campaign, share their the issues that matters to them and their views. And before we go on with this is particularly an important time because we have 3 days, actually 2 days for everyone who did not register to register. But without further ado, I would love to introduce my guest today. I am so honored to have him. Michael is an amazing leader who is going to make a huge difference, and not just for his districts, but I believe he will make a huge difference for the whole states and hopefully one day for the whole United States. Michael, hello, and thank you for joining me. And can you introduce yourself to everyone and tell us who you are?
Yes, well, Hagir, thank you so much for having me today. I'm really excited to be here, and I really want to thank you for giving a platform to candidates to express, their viewpoints and who they are, and really show voters how important this election is in 2020. As you introduced, I'm Michael Blichar Jr. I am running for state representative in PA House District 187. I actually am building off of a campaign that I started in 2018. I had run in a short period of time, 3 months. I had replaced the previous candidate that had withdrew from the race. And what I started building was a movement that's caring about people. And so I moved into the district about 7 years ago when I had started my career at Kutztown University. I started as an undergrad where I finished my bachelor's degree, and then I also completed my master's degree there as of May of this year. And throughout my life has humbled me a lot. I grew up in Palmerton, Pennsylvania, not too far away from the district, and my family faced many struggles throughout our lives, whether it was losing our home during the housing crisis, facing financial struggles where my parents had to sometimes choose between putting food on the table or paying the electric bill. And so I faced on really challenges early in my life. And what I wanted to do was use what I learned to give back to people in my communities. When I moved into the 187th district, I was attending Kutztown. I was doing a lot of activism around social justice issues, voter rights, more funding for education, especially for higher ed, advocating for our community's small businesses and protecting our environment in our local areas. And
Hmm.
so when I was asked to run for state representative in 2018, I saw that as the opportunity to finally give people a voice. For over a decade, we've had a representative in the state house who hasn't really listened to everybody in the district. And so that's why I'm running, because I have the empathy, the care. My entire career is dedicated towards fighting for people in this district. And so I want to bring that to the state legislature. COVID-19 has impacted us in so many ways. And as you know,
Mhm.
COVID-19 only has exposed a lot of the lack of leadership and accountability that has already existed in the state legislature for quite some time. And
Yes.
so what we need to do is we need a leader who will start implementing policies that will get Pennsylvania and people in our district back on their feet and start moving us forward.
And it is, I just want to, before we move forward, I just want to say how refreshing it is to see a young face running. That not just give me a hope, but like I mentioned to you before, I have a 19 years old, soon to be 20, and she was so excited to hear your name and read about you and everything that you stand for. And so, I mean, can you just, before we move on and talk about your campaign, can you tell me what particularly got you to think, you know what, this is it? I have to do something. And now. And why now?
Right. Um, I'm so glad to hear that your children are very excited about a young person like myself running. There's, I wish there was more of us running for office and being civically
Yeah.
engaged and understanding how important this moment truly is. And I'm running because there's so much at stake in this election. And at the end of the day, the policies that are being created are going to impact not only current folks, but generations to come,
Yeah.
folks like your children, people like me, even if I have children later in my life. These policies are going to impact us for a very, very long time. And I think young people need to have a seat at the table to implement policies that will create a better future for them and future generations to come. A lot of my policy platforms, from anywhere from education to job creation to protecting our environment, I believe those are key issues in creating a future that is brighter and better for everyone in our district and throughout the Commonwealth. Obviously, some challenges that I face as a young candidate is that sometimes people assume that I'm not experienced, but the
Yeah.
moment I get on that stage, I know what's at stake. I know what I'm fighting for, and I'm very passionate to advocate on behalf of my generation and generations to come. And so, it's talking about things like investing in public education, making sure that no student, regardless of their zip code, is left behind. It's about ensuring that we have an earth that God gave us that's protected, um, while also creating good jobs, having clean air, clean water, a place for our kids to live in that's safe and secure. And it's also providing opportunities for them to be successful. I believe every single person in this Commonwealth and the nation by extension has the right to live that American dream. If it were not for programs like grants and funding and things that helped my family, I would not be here today. And so that's
Yeah.
why I'm so focused on giving back to these communities and fighting for them because I know what's at stake. I know how people feel. And this election, I truly believe, is one of the most consequential of our lifetime. In this election, we are choosing one of two paths. Do we continue down this path of division, of lack of understanding, lack of empathy, or do we choose a new path where we have leaders who want to fight for their communities, regardless of what political party you come from? That someone who legitimately cares about folks in their district. And that's why I'm running because I am that candidate. I may be young, but I think I'm a little wise for my age in terms of understanding. And I think a lot of it comes from the struggle and the experiences I've had working with so many people through my activism.
And thank you. You are, wiser than anyone that I know, but that shouldn't be the problem. And I think that's why I asked you this question because ageism is one of the isms and the issues that we face in our society. And I knew I did not hear that somewhere or read it in your website, but I knew from my experience, just like Joe Biden is attacked for his age now. I'm sure it's the same way for you. You're young, so we have to make up our mind. We cannot say this is too young, this is too old. We
Right.
need, like you said, to listen to what this candidate is going to bring to the table. And you have a lot to bring to the table. I am honored to have you. And also, I know you are going not to just make a difference, like I said, in your district, but I have high hopes that you will be making a huge impact and inspire other in your age, in your area to run. And this, to me, this is historic. Young people made us or give us 8 great years of President Obama. And we all know if it wasn't for their votes being out there, we won't had that chance and opportunity in history. So what are the young people are doing there? Are supporting you, trying to help? And do you see a lot of enthusiasm from young people for this election?
Yeah, I definitely see a huge amount of enthusiasm in this election, and especially from young people. The nice thing, and unlike a lot of other people, I have the benefit of having my alma mater, Kutztown University, in the district. I also have another institution of higher education, Lehigh Carbon Community College, within the district as well. And so we have a lot of young students who are actively engaged in these movements to fight for policy changes, to fight for young leaders. And I think what they finally see is there's someone doing this. I can do this too. I can run for office. I've had people reach out to me, younger individuals who ask me, should I run for local office? Should I do this? And I say yes. There is no right or wrong time to run for office, and the support will be there. I'm lucky to have been endorsed by Sunrise Movement, which is actually a group of young people that are dedicated towards protecting the environment while
Mhm.
also creating good paying jobs and sustainable jobs for the future. And so, I do have a lot of groups who are very motivated to make sure that I get elected, because if I do get elected, I will make history. I will be one of the youngest legislators in the Pennsylvania House. I'm also openly LGBT. And so, running in a rural area, talking about the isms, ageism, sexism, all those types of things, I know what's at stake and uh, some of the challenges that people face. But what I've done is, if anything, throughout this campaign, obviously the goal is to win in November
Oh,
and
yeah.
flip the seat. But I want to inspire folks to know that no matter where you come from or who you are or what you've been through, you can be a leader in your community. You can make a difference. You can make something happen, and you can impact people's lives in a very significant way.
And Michael, you are impacting many people's life. And I can tell you that right now. I lived longer than you, and I see your impact and your ability. And like I said, in inspiring people, not just your age, but younger, to think that this is not just for someone who lived to be 40, 50, 60. I mean, this is your time. You
Right.
guys know the issues, you know what you need and what you want the future to look like for not just you, but your kids um, once you have one. Um, let's talk about the environment and infrastructure since you brought that the support that you have. That's one of the platform you have on your website. So
Yes.
what are your plans? What are your campaign going to do for that?
Yes. So obviously, environmental issues have been contested and for a long time, right? And we're seeing this even at play on the national level. There's this battle between protecting good paying jobs and also protecting the environment. And you see them constantly at odds with one another. The problem with that is, why does it have to be it's either good paying jobs or it's the environment? We can
Yeah.
do both. And if you look at a lot of studies, there is not a lot of time left to change the course of what is happening. And you can just look around the nation. Uh, yes, a lot of people on the other side, climate change deniers, like to say, well, there's hurricanes every year, there's wildfires every year. The problem is the hurricanes are bigger and stronger and causing more devastation. The wildfires are larger, devastating larger impacts of land over time. The consequences are here. And when I get to be in my 50s and 60s, I want to know that there's going to be a planet that we can live on. And so my plan, and it aligns a lot with some of what the governor came out with, which is focusing on moving towards renewable energy in a Restore Pennsylvania plan within the next 10 to 12 years. So really what it's focused on is phasing out those non-renewable energy sources over time. We know that a lot of folks and a lot of people who live in this district work in those fields, and I don't want them left behind. So what I want to do is create opportunities for training uh, and education to get them up to speed with the energy of the future. So they get first chance at good paying union jobs and renewable energy. And my infrastructure plan will not only address that, but also address our infrastructure. If you drive around many parts of Pennsylvania, as you probably know, you see the roadways, you see what warehousing and massive developments have done to the environment and the landscape. We see massive flooding. Our roads, everything needs to be fixed. And in my plan, in fixing these things, you're creating good paying jobs for people. I want to bring broadband services to our rural areas. I think about all those students who had to study and go to school remotely from home, many
Yeah.
of whom are still doing that, who live in our rural areas and don't have access to the internet, don't have good broadband. We need to bring the technology and the energy of the future to our rural communities so they can be part of a bigger, larger, interconnected world. And a lot of studies show that if we do the necessary measures now to move towards renewable energy, we will save so much more money than if we wait till something bad happens.
You are absolutely right. And that will take us to another area that you discussed, which is boosting the economy. And I know you did talk about that without discussing it as an issue that your campaign is focusing about. But this is all tied up, environment, infrastructure. You're bringing more jobs, you're boosting the economy, of course, as a result. And by looking at the platform and the issue that matters to you, it shows me not just your knowledge, but your ability to think about the bigger picture. And that's why I think we need someone like you. We need a leader like you who is going to make a huge impact in our district and the state. Like you said, when you find jobs for people in your area, that is going to impact the area around it,
Right.
and in return it's going to impact the state. But one of the problems that not just the rural areas but here in Pennsylvania we're having issue with is the healthcare. What is your intake? What are you going to do to help, and why it's an important issue to you?
Well, I know the effects of not having healthcare firsthand. I actually don't have health insurance myself, so I can relate to many people throughout the Commonwealth who are scared of losing their health insurance. Right now, a lot of folks who are out of work don't have access to health insurance. The pandemic has exposed a lot of inconsistencies in our healthcare system. And if we're not taking care of ourselves and we don't have access to that healthcare, how are we supposed to work? How are we supposed to go to school? How are we supposed to participate in many of the other things? And I think you mentioned this. I do see a lot of the bigger picture. A lot of these issues are not standalone issues. They are intersectional and they affect one another. My father, actually, who has been very sick for a long time, regularly, if it weren't for Medicaid, I do not believe he would be alive today. It is only because he has that health insurance that he's able to stay afloat and see a doctor and get the medications that he needs. Um, those healthcare programs are very, very important.
Yeah,
And so, one of my main priorities, and we see this on a national stage, healthcare is a really big issue, especially in the midst of a pandemic.
yeah.
We have seen 250,000 plus individuals who have passed away from COVID due to
Mhm.
a lack of response nationally. And there's people at risk of losing their health care. What I want to do is create a Pennsylvania that focuses on enhancing patient care, but also making sure that nurses, nurse practitioners, registered nurses have a voice in the process and policies that are being made. I want to make sure that we're expanding Medicaid and Medicare and protecting what we have and not diminishing that, giving people access to that kind of health care. One of the very first things that I want to do when I get elected is implementing a bill that will lower the cost of prescription drugs, especially for our seniors and for those with disabilities. I mean, you look at the costs of even insulin for those who have diabetes. It's enormous. And there are things that we can be doing to make that more affordable. I mean, these are things that help keep people alive. And so why would we not want to do that? I will also pass a bill similar to Washington State that will once and for all put into law no one who has a pre-existing condition will be discriminated against by any insurance company. We can do it as a state. We can pass a law. So regardless of what happens, we can recognize as a commonwealth that no one should be discriminated based on pre-existing conditions, because we know that's something that's at stake should the Affordable Care Act be completely struck down at the Supreme Court level. Um, and in terms of nurses, I want to make sure that they're able to give patients the best care possible. That includes giving nurses safe staffing, so they're not getting exhausted, they're not working long, long hours where they're not giving patients care. My father experiences this a lot because of safe staffing issues. He doesn't get to see a doctor, and this probably happens to many people in the Commonwealth and many people I talk to. They don't get to see a doctor for weeks. And at
Yes.
that point, your symptoms or condition or whatever you're experiencing may worsen over that period of time. There's a fragmentation of care in the healthcare system that we see where when a patient is referred to another healthcare system or another provider, the provider isn't always up to date on what that patient has been through, what kind of care they've received. And so I want to make sure we're tackling that. But I also want to give nurse practitioners full practice authority once and for all. So that way we can provide expanded access care, especially in rural areas like mine, to give more options for patients so they have more healthcare providers to meet with and get the care that they need, quality care that they need.
If you see me smiling throughout this whole area, you will know why. I am a nurse at heart. This is my love, before I have my
Yes.
business. And there are so many nurses out there listening to us right now. There is the Nurses for Joe Biden group on Facebook, which I share this with, and they normally watch, but I'm sure they were all smiling. And if you're listening
Yes.
to me right now, you know why am I smiling, and I need you to talk more about that, because this is another issue that we are facing as nurses. We feel burned out, and we feel overworked and underpaid, underappreciated, and I'm sure any nurse out there will relate to that.
Right.
It's not
We
just
have
about.
well over 1,000 nurses, registered nurses, nurse practitioners in our district. As you know, Lehigh Valley Health Network and St. Luke's are very powerful in this area. And so we have a lot of people working in this field. I actually work at Northampton Community College as an academic coach. Uh, that college's nursing program was just rated #1 in the Commonwealth. And so I work with those students, helping them be successful academically. I'm also proud to say that from the Nurses of Pennsylvania organization, I received a 100% trust score and an A rating from them. Unlike my opponent, who received not so great trust scores and an F rating from Nurses of PA, because he doesn't stand up for them. I have actually had conversations with nurses throughout the district who say they've tried to meet with my opponent, Gary Day, multiple times, and he he hears them, but he's not listening to them. And
Yeah.
so I've pledged when I go to Harrisburg that I'm going to give nurses a seat at the table. When we're discussing policy initiatives, I want to make sure that nurses are a part of those conversations and that they have access. So I will have an open door policy to our nurses, our nurse practitioners. I want to make sure they're included in these conversations because I will say, yes, I would be the legislator. Yes, I'd be voting on bills, but I am in no way an expert on the issues that nurses are facing. And I think it's really important. I'm someone who feels very strongly about sharing personal stories and personal experiences. And so I want to hear those things from nurses. I want to know, what are you facing in the field and what kind of policies can we implement that will work for you? Hey, here's a policy that we're thinking about voting on the House floor. What is your opinion? What do you have to say about this bill? I want to hear from you. I just think it's too important. For too long, nurses have been ignored at Harrisburg.
Thank you for that. And on behalf of all the nurses out there and all the healthcare workers, we are thankful to have someone like you who acknowledge and be our voice out there. And I'm sure this is not just for healthcare and nurses. I'm sure you have the ability to help any other essential workers, any working families out there. And,
Yes.
by being a fighter, I'm sure everyone will bring an issue to you and contact you and discuss an issue. You will give it 100% of your time. I feel the passion, and I hear it in your voice. I've been following you, and I hope everyone listening to us right now will take a minute to go visit Michael's website. I have that on the top of the video, and I'm going to share it again. He also is on Facebook. I'm going to share all his platforms so you can listen to him, read about him, learn about the issues that matter, and support him. And that's the most important part. But when you talk about helping nurses and jobs, that would not happen without quality of education, which is one of the issues that you're discussing in your campaign. Can we talk about that?
Yes, yes. And like I said before, a lot of these issues are very interconnected, right? We can't have people working in good paying jobs if they don't have the skills necessary. I just received actually when I graduated with my master's degree is actually in higher education administration. So I work at Northampton. My entire career is dedicated towards helping students be successful and having the opportunities. I am very lucky that I ever got to go to college and receive the education that I did, but I would have never been able to get there if it were not for grant programs, for scholarships, and things that the state government was funding to help me get there. I was the first in my family to ever receive a 4-year college degree as well as a master's degree. But I also want to invest in those technical careers, those trades. That's why I'm proud to have a lot of endorsements from labor unions that focus on these types of careers. And we've seen a huge lack of funding from the state in terms of education. We know that an education and training and job opportunities is key to a successful future. And we need to make sure that we're having people who are properly qualified to fill a lot of these good paying jobs that I want to create for folks. And so when I am elected, I'm going to continue to invest in public education K through 12 as the product of K through 12 myself. I know how important this is. I love our public schools, and our public schools should not be left behind. I look at where our district sits, and we're very fortunate to have some really great school districts: Northwestern, Lehigh, Parkland School District, and Kutztown Area School District. But if you look to the west of us in Reading, and you look to the east of us in Allentown, you see districts that are quite on a different level than what you see in Parkland. I've been able to visit a lot of these school districts myself, and I've seen the disparities because of lack of funding, because of lack of fair funding. And so, no child in our Commonwealth should ever be left behind because of where they live. That is not something that they control, and they deserve equal opportunities. We talk about everybody should have access to this American dream. Well, then let's make it a reality. Let's restore the state level funding that we used to have back to normal levels and implement a fair funding formula that makes equal funding for all schools. Let's invest in schools that are behind to catch them up with schools that are doing well. And let's also invest in technical and vocational careers for students that want to choose that route, and invest in our 14 state system institutions of higher ed for students that want to take that route. I think it's really, really important as someone who works at a community college, who went to a public university, who went to public school. I see the value. And look at the person that public education has made me today. Standing here fighting for those issues. And when I talk about fair funding, I think it's important that the state starts investing in public education again, because our property taxes are very high in Pennsylvania, especially in our district. And we have senior citizens who are losing their homes, places that they built their livelihoods in. Even farmers, for example, because they simply cannot pay their property taxes. And I just think as a state, we've been relying too much on property owners to front the bill for education, while the state doesn't give any state dollars. And we can get funds through a variety of methods. Governor Wolf proposed legalizing marijuana to get funds from that. I've also proposed increasing taxes on corporations throughout the state, implementing a severance tax on the fracking and fossil fuel industry, which is taking tons of resources from Pennsylvania and not giving anything back to the communities. We can use those funds towards things like education, investing in healthcare, investing in job creation, opportunities for various fields. So feel very passionately, and this is where the intersectional issues comes together in this way.
And all your issues that you are passionate about, they all tie together. You just discussed property taxes, which was supposed to be my next one, and it all tied together. And I just want to say, you are giving me so much hope. I can't even hide it. I'm smiling throughout just listening to you. And I want to thank Janelle. Janelle is our 199 district, if you know her. She is the candidate. She's an amazing woman. She will be with us
Yes.
in soon. Thank you, Janelle. And she said, vote. Good luck, Michael. And she's urging people to vote for you. And that's what we need, Pennsylvania. That's
Yes.
what we need. We need fresh voices. We need people who live the issues. And we're there. They know what to do to correct it. And if the educational, our public education, give us someone amazing like you, Michael, why should we let something like that go? We should fight.
Right.
And we fight for equal opportunities for others. And like you said, you were lucky enough to be in a school district that offer what you need. Some other kids were not that lucky. And it is not fair for us to ask the same input from a person that did not receive the same quality of
Right.
education, training, housing, healthcare, etc. And that will bring us to diversity and inclusion, and bring us to the issue that we are facing today. And that's one of the issue that you have on your campaign. And there is a lot to say about that, so I will just
Yes.
leave it to you. I want to hear
Okay.
you.
Well, diversity inclusion. I think I'll start with my career. As I mentioned before, I am a member of the LGBT community. My partner, he is a person of color, and my entire career, I fight for every single person. But one of the major things that I did when I was at Kutztown University was really shift the focus to diversity and inclusion, not only
Mm,
within higher education, but within our small town communities. While I was at Kutztown University, and I served on the Council of Trustees after I was appointed by Governor Wolf, I helped shift the focus at the university. After the 2016 election, as you know, um, there was a lot of hate groups that felt emboldened by the words of the president, by the words of certain groups that were saying things throughout our country, and they felt validated. But that didn't mean that our students at Kutztown University, or those in our communities, shouldn't be supported. I actually helped create a bias response task force that anytime there's hate or bias on campus, there's a place to respond to. There's support networks. I fought on a lot of issues, from LGBT issues to race issues, to fighting for those with disabilities, to feminist related issues. I'm proud to say, as a man, I am a feminist. Um, and I feel very, very passionately about these things. When I worked at the Allentown YMCA, I worked with a wide range of diverse populations. I was actually the financial aid coordinator at the Allentown YMCA, providing financial aid so that folks in our area could stay healthy, come to the gym. And a lot of them, as you know, Allentown has a large Hispanic population, and I wanted to do everything I could to support those communities, so they have access to community centers like the YMCA. I think our country is at an awakening period.
yeah.
I will tell you, I do fear sometimes that my partner may not come home from work if he is pulled over by a cop. That's a real fear for me.
Yeah.
We have LGBT individuals who, were in Pennsylvania, it's still illegal to deny a gay couple housing. We still have transgender individuals being discriminated against. People with disabilities still don't have access to everything. Women's rights are on the line when we talk about equal pay, and we talk about family leave, not just for women, but for also fathers. There's so much at stake. And when people look at my website, you can see there's a lot of issues. And in terms of diversity and inclusion, I think it's important to focus on all these communities. Um, when Back earlier this summer, when I was able to watch the George Floyd video, obviously this is not something new in America, and it's something that continues not to be addressed, that needs to be addressed. Uh, it was so disheartening to see that, and outrageous that in our country we still face these issues and that our legislators continue not to do anything. I'm proud to say that I actually received an endorsement from People for the American Ways, End Police Killing Slate, because I am dedicated to ending police violence against communities of color and implementing policies that uplift communities of color. That includes reforming our criminal justice system. That means making sure we have pay equity for everyone. COVID-19, for example, has even impacted communities of color. Hispanics and especially Black women are more likely to have negative effects of COVID-19, are more likely to be impacted and more likely to die from COVID-19. And we see this all over the country and we're not addressing it. But it's because we already have inequities in healthcare and education and jobs. And so they're very interconnected issues. When we uplift one community, we're uplifting the whole. And so I will fight for things. I will fight for community conversations. One of the things that I was very involved with at Kutztown was this group called Peace Love Kutztown. And what it did was it brought together people from all different backgrounds to have those tough conversations. And so I want to do that throughout the district. I want to make sure that we're including everybody in conversations and that we're creating an atmosphere of acceptance and openness and tackling people's prejudice through education. I was an educator. I worked at our LGBT center at Kutztown University. I also worked at our women's center. And a lot of the work that I did was educating folks. Sometimes all it takes is having a conversation and exposing people to someone's story. I used to share my story all the time, my coming out story, living in a small town community where I was not treated well by my religious community and not treated well by my peers when I came out. And so I have deep empathy for the issues that communities of color, those with disabilities, women, and the LGBT community are facing on a regular basis. And we can see that this nation is largely divided and people are scared. And I want them to know that they have an ally in me, that I will fight for them. And as a white person, I know I have a lot of privilege. And I want to use that privilege, like I have throughout my entire career, to uplift others and make sure that they finally have a seat at the table and that their dreams of having that American dream become a reality.
I cannot hide my proudness, my every feeling rushing now just listening to you. I can see a better future, and you don't even know that you made not just my day and Janelle. We were discussing earlier how dark of a tunnel, and I'm a positive person. I like to
Right.
see the light, but this is you feel like the snow, that effect, the ripple effect. You feel like everything is gonna be in a stake in the next, we have what, 19, 18 days left. So that will determine our future. But to listen to a leader like you who know what he's doing and passionate about humanity, human rights, and like you said, all our rights are at stake right now. As a woman, I felt I lost something when RBG died. And
Right.
now every day they're considering someone who is going to take us back 100 years, not just like you said, losing our rights to vote, but our rights to make any decisions about our bodies, discrimination at work, all the issues that people fought to make it happen for us, for me, for my girls. It is going to go away if we don't vote. And that's why this year, everyone listening to us right now, this is not just you. This is not your issue. This is your kids' issue. And like I always say, vote like your life depends on it, because it does.
Exactly.
All our life depends on this. And Michael, talking about what you've been through, and I want you to focus on the last part of how someone who did not experience racism, that's what we ask from them, to understand and help. And sometimes it's hard, and I do understand it's hard for someone who hasn't lived that, to feel any kind of connection or any need to do something. Why should we care? What happened? You said you have a story. I would like to hear, your coming out story, or what happened to you having a different race partner, how people are acting, and how did you manage to make them accept you, or just at least respect your choices. This is very important because it will allow people to uh, understand. Sometime, like you said, we have to just talk. All we need is to have a good conversation with someone. So what can people hear from you and make them feel what we as Black people going through, or as LGBTQ, or anyone that was not accepted before?
Right. Yeah, I've shared because I've done a lot of LGBT activism and centered around a lot of these issues. I've shared my story a lot. As I mentioned before, I grew up in a small rural town uh, in Palmerton, and as I mentioned before, my family faced a lot of financial struggle. So there was already the socioeconomic experience that I had
Mhm.
that was different from some of my peers in high school and middle school. I was also very religious at the time. I went to church all the time. Um, I cared about my religion a lot. And, I always knew I was different, but I didn't know how to explain it. And so when I did finally come out, I faced a lot of backlash from people in my own family. I faced backlash from my faith-based community, which I had assumed up to that point that, I had always learned from them that they accept everybody. God loves everyone, right? And I knew right then and there that I had to do something, right? I had to share my story, my perspective with other people, and I needed to be a leader on these issues to give a voice to those who sometimes feel voiceless. I'm lucky to have an immediate family, my mother and my father and my siblings, who support me 100%. And what my story did for me, what my experiences as a person coming out in a small town that was not accepting at the time, uh, taught me is to have empathy for other people. And so that's why I really started getting involved in not just LGBT issues, but I started getting bigger in my activism. I started focusing on uplifting communities of color, started focusing on folks who have disabilities, on uplifting issues that women face, because I see them as very, very connected. And as you know, we are not just one person, right? I am not just LGBT. I also am from a low socioeconomic background. My partner, for example, he's not just a person of color; he's also a member of the LGBT community. He
Mhm.
also knows what it's like to face low socioeconomic status. And my partner has actually taught me a lot about the issues, the culture, the things that people face in communities of color that my eyes otherwise would not have been open to. And what I try to encourage people to do is have an open mind. Put yourself in situations that, yes, we all know, tough conversations about race, about equality, it's hard to have, especially if you're someone who's never had those conversations before.
Mhm.
And that's why I think education is so important, because higher ed, for example, is a great place to have those tough conversations. And at the end of the day, someone might just change their mind. Even if they don't agree with you in the moment, there have been many people who have heard my story, who I've shared stories with. And going into it, they may have never met an LGBT person. They may not know what it's like to be LGBT or be a person of color. I've created events when I was at Kutztown to have those types of conversations and platforms. Um, and people come back to me later and say, wow, thank you for having this conversation with me. And I think a lot of it, when they come back to me, they're like, thank you for just being kind and also being understanding.
Mhm.
I think the key when we're having these tough conversations with folks who don't understand what it's like to experience racism or homophobia or transphobia or even xenophobia is they need someone who's willing to sit down with them and have a calm conversation that is meant to be educating. When I worked in the LGBT center, one of the major things we talked about was giving people the opportunity to learn,
Yeah.
and holding them accountable for their mistakes. So if they do make a mistake, if they say something off-putting about a group of people, coming up to them and saying, "Hey, I didn't like what you said," not in an angry tone, but saying, I didn't like what you said, and let's talk about why. Let's talk about why this is important not to say these certain things or to have these certain viewpoints. And let me educate you and give you some history, and let them absorb that. I've been able to bridge gaps between people who have never experienced these things and people who have. And what I found is nothing but productive conversations, conversations that have led to good things. And sometimes it ends up with people who have that privilege, who never experienced those things, actually sitting down and advocating for those things. I was really proud when I went to the Black Lives Matter protests and rallies, even in Kutztown and throughout the area. There was a lot of mixture of people from a wide variety of groups coming together once and for all and saying, this is what we got to do. We got to fight for equality. Everyone deserves an equal chance. And I think it's just putting that level playing ground and connecting to someone else who can understand your story from their perspective too. So if I sit down with someone and I share my story, you know, maybe because I shared with them that I know what it's like to lose a home or struggling to pay the bills, they can understand that. They can understand what it's like to be treated differently. A lot of people throughout their life know what it's like to be bullied in school, right? And that's it's playing a level playing ground and coming to consensus and just having those tough conversations. I think people have to have them. And like I mentioned before, our nation is at a state of reckoning. I really do believe we're in another wave of civil rights movements that we've seen, 50, 60 years ago. I believe this is the next wave, and it's happening with young people. You see young people are standing up for this stuff, and we're having those conversations.
And I cannot be more proud to see that in my lifetime. Having two young girls that, like you said before, I fear every time they leave the house that something will happen to them or how the world is going to treat them. Being kind and understanding is all we ask from you. We don't ask anyone to believe what we believe in or to change your sexual preferences or religion. We just ask you to be accepting to someone who is different than you. And
Right.
it doesn't have to be that person is right or uh, you're wrong. It just have to be we all exist in this world together and we have to find a way to live peacefully. And that's what we're struggling through right now. And that's why we need new leaders, new leadership, bright future. And that's you, Michael. Listening to you, and I hope everyone that is listening to us right now. I first want to thank all of you for tuning in and staying with us because everything that you are saying, Michael, is bringing people together and grabbing their attention. Thank you for watching him. Thank you for listening. But we want you to do more. We want you to volunteer. We want you to go to his website, share, make people know his name and what he stands for. And how can we help you, Michael? How people can volunteer, donate, etc.
Yes. So we are now, as you know, 18 days away from Election Day, and the numbers are looking good. My own opponent has admitted that this district is close. And what we are doing is we are having, like we just talked about today, tough conversations with people on the other side of the political spectrum. At the end of the day, we need new leadership. We need someone like myself who is willing to put partisan politics aside, reach across the aisle, have those tough conversations to help Pennsylvanians. And to help get me elected, it's doing literature drops. We're doing those this Saturday. I think I just posted about it today, or tomorrow. You'll find that. I can post all these links as well. You can also find it on our website on the homepage. There's a volunteer list. Doing phone banks, having those conversations with voters is super, super important. Donating anything you can. Unlike my opponent who takes money from corporate PACs and big money donors, I take all my funds, everything that I have built is based off of small grassroots donations from people like yourself because I want my campaign to be built by the people for the people. And so anything you can do to donate, we're going to be sending out letters to Republicans and independents to get them to flip their vote for us in November. We are doing postcards, we're doing mailers, we're doing digital advertising, anything that we can do to try to really get out the vote before November 3rd. And as you know, many people are already voting. They've received their mail-in ballots. And so the referendum that's taking place in this election cycle is already happening around us. So we're trying to reach as many folks as we possibly can. You know, sign up for those things. We need your help. And when you sign up for those things, you're not only just advocating for myself, but you're also advocating for other leaders up the ballot will fight for the same issues. But I really like to say, us at the state house level, we make a huge impact on what happens in your daily lives. And so we want to make sure that we're flipping this PA House, because if we can flip the House and the PA Senate, we can really start putting in place policies that will help us recover from this crisis that we have faced and move the Commonwealth in a better direction for every single person, no matter what your party is, no matter where you live in Pennsylvania.
And you heard it, there is 18 more days left. And I'm going to repeat again that today is the 16th. We have 3 more days before you can register here in PA. You can go to iwillvote.com or votes with an S, PA, votespa.com, and register to vote. It's so easy. It is a simple form that you can fill. Send that in and make sure you request your mailing ballot if you are voting by mail. But Michael, before we end, if I just joined and I want to know what were you talking about? Who's Michael and what you stand for? Can you give us a good 10 minutes of everything that we discussed and just allow people to hear you one last time before we finish?
Yes, more than happy to. Well, if you're just joining on or just listening, I am Michael Blichar Jr. I'm running as one of the candidates for PA House District 187. And the reason I'm running is because it is time for new leadership. This crisis has only created a situation where it's exposed the failures of the leadership that's currently there. The person I'm running against, Gary Day, has been in the state legislature for over 10 years. And what he does is he only ever has to listen to his party because he's participated in things like gerrymandering. And even folks who are in his party, to those of you who are in his party, if you think he listens to you, that is far from the truth. My opponent has built an entire career in politics to benefit himself and his family and those in his sphere. What I am fighting for is, yes, I may be the Democratic candidate, but I will be a Pennsylvanian state representative for everybody. And as we talked about today, I'm a candidate who has a clear policy platform. I have plans in place that I want to implement that will put us on a path to recover from COVID, recover from this crisis, and get our state back on the right track. Everything from investing in education, public schools, K through 12, investing even in childcare. I didn't get to mention this earlier, but investing in childcare, early childhood education, investing in our state system of higher education, our 14 state universities and colleges, as well as our community colleges, and also putting training opportunities into technical and vocational careers. And once we do that, something else we talked deeply about was jobs. And I have tons of plans to create good paying jobs. I want to help small businesses, removing small tax barriers that prevent them from creating good paying jobs for local folks, because I've seen the devastating impacts that this COVID crisis has had on our small businesses. You walk up and down Kutztown where I live, and you'll see these businesses are the life and breath of our small town communities, and I don't want to see them disappear. I want to make sure that we give them everything we possibly can. Creating jobs through protecting the environment, transitioning people to renewable energy, and making sure that we're building an infrastructure that works for rural areas, urban areas, and suburban areas throughout the entire Commonwealth. So all of these issues, and even healthcare, for example, as well, making sure that we're giving nurses a seat at the table in Pennsylvania and Harrisburg, through safe staffing levels, giving nurse practitioners full practice authority, addressing the fragmentation of care and healthcare, and for patients, protecting Medicaid and Medicare, protecting those with pre-existing conditions, making sure we're lowering the cost of prescription drugs for everyone. Look, we are in one of the most consequential elections of our lifetime. And unlike my opponent, I am not a politician. I know what it's like to lose a home. My family lost their home during the 2008 housing crisis. I know what it's like to sometimes choose between paying the electric bill or putting food on the table. I know what it's like to lose a job. I know what it's like not to have health care. I know what it's like to take care of a sick family member. And so I have the empathy and compassion that is necessary for anybody who wants to be a state representative. Unlike my opponent, I don't just hear, I listen. And I listen actively because what you are going through, the issues that are important to you, the things that you are passionate about are also important to me. The job of a state rep at the end of the day is to make sure that they're being a voice for all their constituents, not just their party, and not just those who give them donations, but to every single person in their district, and to put aside their own personal agenda to fight for what is right for everyone in their district and everyone in the Commonwealth. And that is what I will do. And so if you look at my website and you look at my plans, you can see there's a clear division between what my opponent has done, which has been a whole lot of nothing. My opponent can hardly ever answer voter guides, to be transparent with all of you, doesn't host town halls, and the only time we really see him is during an election. If you look, most of the things he has been doing in recent days and weeks and months is because he knows an election and a seat is at stake. We can't continue to reelect someone over and over and over again who constantly ignores the people of the district. That's where we have a chance. It's a new decade. 2020 has been one heck of a year, but
It has
we have a chance to
been.
make history.
And you are definitely going to make history. Michael is what the leader should look like, and it's to me at least. And I hope you listened to him and you heard him and you felt the same way. But you are what hope look like. You are what the future that I want to see look like. You are who I want to lead my girls. You are the one who I want to lead me and lead this country. And I am not just saying that because you are sitting in front of me, but we spent a whole hour, everyone. And Michael held himself. He talked about all the issues that not just matters to him, but I am sure you all relate to it as some way or another. I know I related to all the issues that he discussed. And I don't want someone to sit and do a whole lot of nothing. I want someone who will do something like Michael. And I want you to give him a chance. If he doesn't do the right job, then vote him out. And that's why we have election. But I'm sure
Exactly.
he will do the right thing, and we cannot keep doing the same thing, electing the same person and expect different results. If he hasn't done it from day one, it is not going to be done. And we are tired of seeing elected officials who show up a week or a couple weeks before the election just to talk about what they will do. You got the chance, buddy. So now step away and allow the young generation to do something. I want to thank everyone for listening to us and for hearing Michael and for helping him. And I'm sure this will be your homework. Go do something. We have 18 more days. That's it. 18 days, guys, between our future, between determining how everything is going to go for us in the next 4 years. I want you to volunteer, contact Michael's campaign, donate, do everything, share, make sure people know his name. And if you don't live in that district or you don't even live in the Pennsylvania, We have people that watch us from different states. You still can do that. From there, you can text, you can make phone banking, you can do something, and to help not just Michael, but to help the whole state and the 50 states, because our life depends on your vote. I want to thank you all, and I want to thank you, Michael, for coming and giving us your time. You are a busy man, and I know you have a lot to do. So I just want to
Yes.
thank you. And you have, if you have few words you want to say before we finish, the floor is yours.
Yes, well, Hajir, I just really want to thank you for giving me a platform today to really discuss the issues. I think any opportunity we have to help people understand how they can participate in our democracy and make things better for themselves is really, really important. Um, but thank you again so much. And thank you to everyone who tuned in, who's supporting our campaign, and everyone who's already voting for us. We cannot do this without you. We need your support. And with 18 days left, we're going to keep trudging along and fighting and fighting. I say onward to victory to November 3rd.
Thank you. Thank you, Michael. Thank you, everyone. And please vote. Make your vote count, and we will see you on Monday.